Like most rivers in Britain, the Tees starts off in one of the most desolate environments in the country, the moorlands. In this case, the moorlands of Cumbria, not far from the border with County Durham.
There aren't actually that many rivers in the UK which start off in dramatic environments, tumbling out of beautiful rocky mountainsides. More often than not, their source is a big soggy mass like this. With annual rainfall at 1,200 millimetres, these bogs never dry out. They soak up water like a sponge.
For well over half the year, the moorland sponge is unable to hold on to the huge amounts of water that fall on it. It lets it go via a network of trickles and rivulets that eventually combine to become what's recognisable as a stream. At this altitude, just a few hundred metres downstream from the soggy moorland summits, the Tees is still a very narrow stream. But it's already starting to cut a V-shaped valley at certain spots, and it's carrying quite a lot of sediment, the material that it's forced out of the land surface on its way down.
Let's forget the big boulders for a minute and take a shovelful of bedload that looks a bit more average. Not very scientific, I know, but we'll compare it with samples taken from further downstream.
Like me, if you live in the southeast of England in lowland Britain, you may have no idea of just how extensive these upland areas are. In the UK as a whole, one estimate says that the moorland environment covers a quarter of the country. The Tees is now really up and running with high levels of erosive energy.
This spot is only 5 kilometres from the source of the Tees, but already there's nothing sharp left in the river. Every piece of the bedload has had its corners knocked off, smoothed and rounded by the erosion that's happened so far.
It's in this section that erosion is at its most powerful. The downward gradient plus the high volume of water and bedload have enabled the Tees to cut several steep V-shaped sections. As the river drops to about 350 metres above sea level, the wild moorland environment begins to peter out, and more space is taken up by farmland. At this altitude, practically all of it is pasture used to raise cattle and sheep. With meadows in the valley floor and the steep V-shape on the valley sides, as the river sweeps downstream in broad curves, the Tees is beginning to excel as a piece of top-notch scenery. Not far from the falls, the Tees leaves its steep upland section and broadens out. As the altitude drops, temperatures rise. Rainfall is lower and agriculture is easier. Farmland now occupies 95% of the valley. In the middle section, the size of the fragments is smaller. Just over halfway down from the river's source, the feeling of being in a valley has completely disappeared. The lowlands of the floodplain extend for 10 kilometres or so on either side of the river. On this stretch, the Tees does another one of its classic pieces of physical geography. Meanders. Meanders of all shapes and sizes. Meanders can crop up anywhere along the course of a river, but they are always much more frequent, larger and more curvy in the lower reaches. These last few kilometres of the Tees before it enters the sea were once a huge marshland.
And I think I know what we're going to get here. Estuary mud.
This is the vast estuary of the River Tees. It's incredible to think its source is a soggy mass 100 kilometres away on the Pennine Hills.